The fluorescent lights of the detention cell aboard the Galactic Enforcer, Iron Talon, cast an eerie glow on Jackson Vale's weathered face. At 92 years old, his body showed the inevitable signs of human aging: wrinkled skin, thinning white hair, and slightly hunched shoulders. But his eyes, a piercing steel blue, remained sharp and calculating as they had been in his prime. The cell was deliberately designed to intimidate. Stark white walls, minimal furnishings, and surveillance devices that didn't bother with subtlety. A sterile white chair sat bolted to the floor in the center, where Jackson now sat with perfect posture, hands folded neatly in his lap. He wore standard Earth civilian attire, a simple gray jumpsuit with the insignia of the Terran Diplomatic Corps embroidered on the breast pocket, a relic of his former station. Commander Zorax of the Vixari species strode into the cell, his muscular 7-foot frame dwarfing the elderly human. The commander's crimson scales glistened under the harsh lighting, and the natural armor plates across his shoulders shifted slightly as he moved. Behind him followed First Officer Nix, a slender Lyrathi with iridescent blue skin and large, almond-shaped eyes that seemed to absorb every detail of the room, and Security Chief Krell, a bulky Draxian whose dark exoskeleton looked capable of withstanding small arms fire. Jackson Vale. Zorax's voice rumbled through vocal chambers, evolved for intimidation. Former Earth Defense Force. Current status: retired diplomat. Captured after your civilian transport deliberately violated Galactic Coalition restricted space. A thin smile revealed rows of serrated teeth. Do you deny these charges? Jackson's face remained impassive. I deny nothing, Commander. Though captured implies resistance, which I did not offer. Zorax circled the human slowly, the talon-like claws on his feet clicking against the metal floor. You humans always think you're clever. Your species has been granted Class B observational status for barely a century, and already you test boundaries. Was this a pathetic attempt at espionage? Or simply senility causing you to forget navigation protocols? Krell huffed, a sound like grinding stones. We should make an example of him. The humans need to understand their place in the galactic hierarchy. Violence so quickly, Chief Krell? Jackson's voice was calm, almost amused. How predictably Draxian of you. The security chief's exoskeleton plates flared in anger, but Nix raised a 6-fingered hand. The Lyrathi's voice was melodic, almost hypnotic. Let's be methodical. I'm curious why an experienced diplomat would so flagrantly violate Coalition space law. There must be purpose behind such action. Jackson nodded appreciatively at Nix. A rational approach, officer. Thank you. Don't thank me, Nix replied coolly. I'm merely gathering data. Zorax leaned down, bringing his face inches from Jackson's. You have exactly 10 minutes to explain yourself before I order a full neural scan, which, I should mention, has an 82% survival rate for human subjects. Jackson didn't flinch. Then I suggest we don't waste time. He straightened in his chair. I am here as an unofficial representative of Earth's interests. My violation of your space was intentional, a calculated risk to force this exact meeting. A chuckle rippled through Zorax's throat. So you admit to illegal entry? This grows simpler by the moment. Simple? Jackson smiled for the first time. No, Commander. This situation is anything but simple. You see, the Coalition has miscategorized humanity for decades. We've observed your practices, studied your hierarchical species classifications based on physical capabilities, technological advancement, and territorial range. He paused, making eye contact with each alien in turn. You've made a critical error in your assessment of our kind. Krell stepped forward menacingly. Your species is physically inferior. This is objective fact. Average strength 1/3 of Draxian baseline. No natural defenses. Limited sensory capacity, and short lifespans. These metrics place humans firmly in Class B status. Metrics can be deceiving, Jackson replied, unperturbed by the towering alien. Throughout Earth's history, apex predators weren't always the strongest or fastest. They were the most adaptable, the most patient, and often the most intelligent. He turned his gaze back to Zorax. Commander, while your coalition has been watching us, we've been watching you, more thoroughly than you realize. A small alarm chirped from Nyx's communication device. The Lyrithi frowned, long fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Commander, we're experiencing a minor fluctuation in the ship's secondary power grid. Engineering reports it's likely nothing concerning. Jackson's lips twitched slightly. 7 minutes remaining in our discussion. I believe... Zorax's eyes narrowed. Continue, human. You're only digging a deeper pit for yourself and your species. Am I? Jackson leaned forward. Let me be direct, then. The Coalition's 3-tier species classification system is fundamentally flawed when applied to humans. You categorize based on immediate observable traits and miss the long game entirely. He gestured to his frail body. You see weakness. You see prey. What you fail to see is that humans are apex predators of a different sort. Your species barely controls a single solar system, Krell scoffed. The Coalition spans 17 galactic sectors. And yet here I am, an elderly human, alone on your flagship, commanding the attention of 3 high-ranking officers. Jackson smiled again, more broadly this time. Curious, isn't it? Nyx's communication device chirped again, more insistently. Commander, engineering now reports irregularities in the quantum communication arrays. They're having difficulty isolating the cause. Fix it, Zorax snapped without taking his eyes off Jackson. This discussion takes priority. Jackson nodded thoughtfully. Your ship, the Iron Talon, is a Nexus-class enforcement vessel. I believe quantum core propulsion, neural integrated defense systems, Hadfield radiation shielding, impressive technology. His blue eyes twinkled. A bit outdated by Coalition standards, though, isn't it? This model was cutting edge perhaps 15 years ago? Zorax's scales darkened slightly, a Vixari sign of surprise. How could you possibly know the specifications of our vessel? As I said, Commander, we've been watching, learning, adapting. Jackson gestured casually around the cell. Humans have always excelled at pattern recognition and information analysis. While your coalition observed our physical limitations, you overlooked our cognitive capabilities. Krell growled. Commander, this human is stalling. I recommend we proceed with interrogation protocols. 5 minutes remaining by your ultimatum, Commander. Jackson noted calmly. Perhaps you should consider why I might be stalling, as your security chief suggests. Before Zorax could respond, the lights in the detention cell flickered, and the ambient hum of the ship's engines subtly changed pitch. Nyx's fingers moved rapidly across multiple holographic displays that had now appeared around the Lyrithi's slender form. Commander, we have system anomalies spreading across multiple sectors of the ship. Environmental controls, navigation systems, even the quantum core stabilizers are showing irregular patterns. Nyx's large eyes reflected the scrolling data. This shouldn't be possible. Zorax turned sharply to Jackson. What have you done? Me? Jackson raised his eyebrows in mock surprise. I'm just an elderly human sitting in a detention cell. How could I possibly affect your ship's systems? Krell moved with surprising speed for his bulk, massive hand grasping Jackson's jumpsuit and lifting him partially out of the chair. You will explain now, or I will... Security Chief Krell. Jackson's voice remained steady despite dangling from the alien's grip. Did you know that Draxian exoskeletons have a fascinating vulnerability at the junction between the thoracic and abdominal plates? A precisely applied pressure point about here. He made a slight gesture with his hand, not actually touching Krell. Causes temporary but complete paralysis of the lower extremities. Earth's xenobiology researchers discovered this 43 years ago. Krell's compound eyes widened in shock as he dropped Jackson back into the chair and stepped away. You see, Jackson continued, smoothing his jumpsuit. Humans study weaknesses. Yours, ours, everyone's. It's how we survived on a planet where nearly everything was faster and stronger than us. He turned to Zorax. 3 minutes now, Commander. Shall we continue discussing classification systems? Or would you prefer to address your ship's deteriorating condition? The emergency lighting had activated, bathing the cell in a pulsing red glow. Nyx was now fully engaged with multiple holographic interfaces, the Lyrithy's normally composed features, showing clear signs of concern. Commander, primary systems are now being affected. We're losing control of the ship sector by sector. Engineering can't isolate the source. It appears to be coming from everywhere at once. Zorax's scales had darkened to a deep crimson, a sign of both anger and alarm in his species. This is impossible. Our systems are isolated from external networks. No signal could penetrate our defenses without detection. Unless, Jackson said quietly. The signal was already inside your defenses. Commander, did your security protocols think to check my civilian transport thoroughly after capturing it? Or did you dismiss it as primitive human technology, unworthy of concern? Realization dawned in Zorax's reptilian eyes. You brought something aboard, a device. No device. Jackson shook his head. Just code. Elegant, patient code that's been sleeping in your system since my ship docked with yours. Written by humans who understand your technology, perhaps better than you do. He glanced at the pulsing red lights. It appears the sleeper has awakened. Nyx looked up from the holographic displays. Commander, we've lost control of propulsion. Life support remains stable, but all other primary functions are compromised. The quantum communication array it's reconfiguring itself. 2 minutes, Jackson noted. I suggest you make a decision quickly. Commander Zorax, your ship is currently broadcasting a specialized quantum signal that will be detected by Coalition High Command within moments. They'll witness everything that happens in this room. He leaned forward. So let me ask you, how would you like history to remember this encounter? Zorax's hand moved to the weapon at his hip, but he didn't draw it. What do you want, human? What humanity has deserved for decades. Recognition of our true status. Jackson's voice took on a new authority, belying his fragile appearance. We are not Class B observers. We are not physically imposing, but we are deadly in ways your classification system doesn't account for. We are patient. We are innovative. And we have been deliberately downplaying our capabilities while studying yours. The ship shuddered slightly, and Nyx reported. Quantum communication established with Coalition High Command. Supreme Counselor Thax is demanding explanation. Put it through, Zorax ordered, his voice tight with controlled fury. A holographic projection materialized in the center of the detention cell. The wizened face of Supreme Counselor Thax, a Vixari elder whose scales had faded to pale orange with extreme age, regarded the scene with obvious displeasure. Commander Zorax, explain this disruption immediately, the counselor demanded, his voice crackling with authority, despite the vast distance the quantum signal had traveled. Supreme Counselor, Zorax began, we have captured a human who represents Earth's interests in a matter of galactic security. Jackson interrupted smoothly, rising from his chair to face the hologram directly. Supreme Counselor Thax, I am Jackson Vale, former Earth Defense Force and diplomatic liaison. I apologize for the dramatic entrance, but traditional diplomatic channels have been systematically denied to humanity for decades. Thax's ancient eyes narrowed. The human speaks out of turn, Commander. Restrain him. With respect, Supreme Counselor, Nix interjected. We currently lack control of ship systems. The human appears to have compromised our technology. Thax's scales darkened in shock. Impossible! How could a Class B species penetrate Coalition security? That, Jackson said firmly, is precisely why I'm here. Your classification is wrong, and that error has become dangerous, not just to humans, but to the entire Coalition. 1 minute, Krell growled, having recovered his composure. Whatever game you're playing, human, it ends soon. Jackson nodded. Indeed it does. He turned back to the hologram. Supreme Counselor, I am authorized to share critical intelligence with the Coalition, but only if Earth is recognized as a Class A civilization with full membership rights. Thax scoffed. Blackmail is not the path to elevation, human. Not blackmail. Demonstration. Jackson nodded to Nix. First Officer, please access the encrypted data packet that's now available in your quantum communication buffer. Authorization code, Prometheus Unbound. Looking to Zorax for confirmation and receiving a reluctant nod. Nix accessed the data. Immediately. The detention cell filled with a complex three-dimensional stellar map, overlaid with trajectory calculations, energy signatures, and threat assessments. What is this? Thax demanded. This, Jackson said gravely, is what lies beyond the Perseus Veil, the dark space your Coalition has been avoiding for centuries. This is what human deep space probes have discovered, while you dismissed us as primitive. He gestured, and the hologram zoomed in on an ominous cluster of energy signatures. We call them the Void Harvesters. They consume stellar energy directly, leaving dead systems in their wake. They've devoured 3 star systems in the past decade and are moving toward Coalition space. The cell fell silent as the 3 aliens and the holographic Supreme Counselor studied the data. Nix was the first to speak, voice barely above a whisper. These readings, if accurate, they suggest a civilization far beyond even Coalition technology. The data is accurate, Jackson confirmed. Earth has been monitoring the Harvesters for 15 years. We've lost 3 deep space research outposts studying them. But we've learned enough to know that no single species can stand against them, not even with your current technology. Thax's ancient face had grown grave. Why bring this to us now, human? Why not through proper channels? Because proper channels would have buried this report for years, while committees debated our credibility. Jackson's voice hardened. We don't have years, Counselor. The Harvesters will reach Coalition space within 5. The countdown timer that had been visible on Nix's display reached 0, and as if on cue, the ship's systems normalized. The emergency lighting faded, replaced by the standard illumination. The holographic displays showed all systems returning to normal operation. As a show of good faith, Jackson said, control of your ship has been restored. The code we uploaded will self-delete, leaving no trace. But the data on the Void Harvesters remains, verifiable through your own long-range sensors, once properly calibrated. Zorax looked from the human to the stellar map still floating between them. His expression unreadable. You took control of a Coalition enforcement vessel, an act of war, to deliver this warning? To deliver this warning and to demand recognition, Jackson corrected. Humanity will not face this threat as a second-class species, denied access to Coalition technology and resources. We bring valuable assets to this fight, our perspective, our problem-solving abilities, our research on the Harvesters, but we come as equals or not at all. Supreme Counselor Thax studied Jackson for a long moment. You've made your point forcefully, human, but the Coalition does not respond well to threats. This is not a threat, Counselor, Jackson replied. It's a reality. The Harvesters are coming whether we cooperate or not. Together, we might survive. Divided by outdated prejudice, we all fall. He stepped closer to the hologram. Humanity has spent centuries overcoming our physical limitations through technology and strategy. We've survived predators, natural disasters, and our own destructive tendencies. We are survivors and adapters. In our own way, we are apex predators, not through strength, but through persistence and intelligence. Thax remained silent for several moments, then turned to Zorax. Commander, escort this human to your secure conference room. I will convene an emergency session of the High Council to evaluate this information. His ancient eyes fixed on Jackson. If your data proves accurate, human, the Coalition will reassess Earth's status. If not, he left the threat unspoken. The data is accurate, Jackson said confidently. And I am prepared to provide detailed technical specifications for the calibrations needed to confirm it independently. After the Supreme Counselor's hologram faded, Zorax dismissed Krell, keeping only Nyx in the room. The commander studied Jackson with new eyes, not friendly, but reassessing. How did you do it? He finally asked. How did one elderly human compromise an entire Coalition warship? Jackson smiled tiredly. I didn't. Thousands of humans working for decades did. I'm just the messenger they sent because I was expendable. He looked down at his aged hands. At 92, I don't have much to lose if this went badly. And the neural scan threat, Zorax pressed. Would have killed me instantly, Jackson admitted. Our research suggested the survival rate for humans is closer to 30%, not the 82 you claimed. But the code would have activated regardless, and the message would have been delivered, just with a martyr instead of an ambassador. Nyx stepped forward. You were willing to die to deliver this warning? To deliver this warning and secure humanity's rightful place, Jackson corrected. Yes. My generation has always been willing to sacrifice for future generations. It's another human trait your coalition has overlooked. Our capacity for self-sacrifice in service of a greater cause. As they led him from the detention cell toward the conference room, Jackson walked with dignity despite his age. Behind them, the holographic display of the Void Harvesters continued to rotate slowly, a silent reminder of the greater threat that made their previous conflicts seem suddenly trivial. In the ship's secure conference room, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. What had begun as an interrogation had transformed into something resembling diplomatic negotiations, albeit tense ones. Jackson sat at one end of a long table designed for various alien physiologies, facing Zorax and Nyx across its polished surface. Our technicians confirm your vessel contained no conventional weapons or devices, Zorax stated, still clearly disturbed by the security breach. How did you deliver the code to our systems? Jackson permitted himself a small smile. Quantum entanglement. Each molecule of paint on my transport's hull contained microscopic particles, entangled with corresponding particles, embedded in the code. When your tractor beam engaged my ship, the interaction created a cascading signal that transferred the dormant program. Nyx's large eyes widened. That's theoretically possible, but the precision required is beyond Coalition capabilities, Jackson finished. Yes, that's rather the point I've been trying to make about classification. Before the conversation could continue, the door to the conference room slid open, and Security Chief Krell entered, followed by a team of technicians carrying equipment. The Draxian's posture radiated barely contained aggression. Commander, the calibrations to long-range sensors have been completed as per the human specifications. His compound eyes fixed on Jackson. I still recommend maximum security protocols. This could be elaborate deception. Noted, Security Chief, Zorax responded coolly. Proceed with the scan. The technicians quickly assembled their equipment, creating a larger version of the holographic display Jackson had shown earlier. After a series of adjustments and quiet conversations in their native languages, the lead technician, a Vixari with paler scales than Zorax, nodded. Systems ready, Commander. Beginning deep scan of the Perseus Veil region. The room darkened as the display illuminated, showing initially only the familiar star patterns of the region. Then, as the scan penetrated deeper, new signatures appeared, exactly matching the data Jackson had provided. The technicians fell silent as the image resolved further, revealing massive structures moving between star systems, their energy signatures unlike anything in Coalition records. "Magnify Sector 7, Nix ordered quietly. The display zoomed in, and everyone in the room could now see what appeared to be a dying star, its energy being systematically extracted by a construct of impossible complexity. Data scrolled along the edges of the display, confirming exponential energy depletion rates. "That star was in main sequence stability 2 years ago," the lead technician said, voice barely above a whisper. "Now it's approaching white dwarf status at an accelerated rate. This isn't natural stellar evolution." Krell's aggressive posture had subtly shifted to one of alert defensiveness, a warrior recognizing a genuine threat. "How many of these harvesters are there?" "We've confirmed 37 distinct entities," Jackson replied, "though they appear to operate as a collective consciousness rather than individual beings. Their technology seems biological in nature, or perhaps a perfect fusion of organic and mechanical components." Zorax turned to Jackson, all previous condescension gone from his demeanor. "You said Earth has been studying these entities for 15 years. What else can you tell us about them?" Jackson leaned forward. "They communicate through gravitational waves rather than electromagnetic signals, making traditional eavesdropping impossible. They show no interest in planets themselves, only stellar energy, and they appear to be following a specific pattern of star types, moving from older, stable stars toward younger, more energetic ones. Which means they're heading directly toward the Cygnus Arm," Nix concluded, "where the Coalition has its highest concentration of populated systems." "Precisely," Jackson nodded. "We estimate they'll reach the outer Coalition territories within 5 years, possibly sooner if they accelerate their consumption rate." A communication alert chimed, and a holographic projection of Supreme Counselor Thax appeared at the center of the table, interrupting the star map display. The ancient Vixari's expression was grave. "Commander Zorax, the High Council has convened an emergency session. Our own long-range observatories have now confirmed the humans' data." His gaze shifted to Jackson. "It seems we owe you an acknowledgement. Jackson Vale of Earth, your warning appears genuine." Jackson inclined his head respectfully. "Then, I hope the Council will consider my proposal with equal seriousness. Supreme Counselor, the Council is prepared to hear Earth's proposal formally," Thax confirmed. "A transport has been dispatched to bring you to Coalition headquarters immediately." However, his voice hardened slightly. "The matter of your illegal entry into Coalition space and the compromising of a military vessel remains to be addressed." "With respect, Counselor," Jackson replied evenly. "Those actions were necessary precisely because of the Coalition's dismissive attitude toward humanity. Had we attempted conventional diplomatic channels, this warning might have come too late, if it was heard at all." Thax's ancient eyes narrowed, but he nodded slowly. "A fair point, though not one that excuses the methods entirely. We will discuss this further at headquarters." The hologram flickered. "Commander Zorax, you are ordered to escort the human personally. Your encounter gives you unique perspective the Council wishes to hear." After the Supreme Counselor's image faded, the room remained silent for several moments. Zorax finally rose, his imposing frame no longer positioned to intimidate Jackson, but rather standing alongside him. "It seems we'll be continuing our discussion at Coalition headquarters, Jackson Vale." The commander's voice had lost its condescending edge. "The transport will arrive in approximately 6 hours. Until then, you will be moved to guest quarters rather than the detention cell." "Thank you, Commander," Jackson replied, slowly standing and making no effort to hide the stiffness in his aged joints. "I would appreciate the opportunity to rest before meeting the High Council." Krell moved to escort Jackson, but his posture had changed, no longer threatening, but protective. "I will accompany you to the guest quarters and ensure your security." As they walked through the corridors of the Iron Talon, the crew they passed stared openly at the elderly human who had somehow commanded the attention of their leaders. Jackson walked with quiet dignity, neither arrogant nor submissive, his eyes taking in the details of the ship with evident interest. "Your technology is impressive," he noted to Nix, who walked on his other side. "Particularly your quantum entanglement communications. Earth has only begun to explore similar systems." Nix studied him curiously. "Yet you used quantum entanglement to deliver your code to our ship." "We focus our research where it provides strategic advantage," Jackson explained. "Communications, cybersecurity, stealth technology, areas where we can overcome physical limitations. We may not have your faster-than-light drive efficiency or weapons capabilities, but in information warfare, we've advanced considerably." They reached the guest quarters, a suite designed for visiting dignitaries, far more comfortable than the Stark detention cell. As the door slid open, Jackson paused and turned to face the three aliens. "I want to be clear about something," he said, his voice firm despite his evident fatigue. "Earth doesn't seek conflict with a coalition. We never have. What we seek is recognition and respect. The threat we face now transcends our differences, but addressing it effectively requires acknowledging what each species brings to the Alliance." Zorax considered this, then nodded slowly. "Your actions today have certainly adjusted my perception of human capabilities. Whether that extends to reclassification remains for the High Council to decide." "And yet," Jackson smiled slightly, "you're no longer addressing me as an inferior being. Commander, progress already, wouldn't you say?" For the first time, a hint of respect showed in Zorax's reptilian features. "Rest, human. The Council will not be as easily impressed as I have been." As the door closed, leaving Jackson alone in the quarters, he moved slowly to a viewport that showed the vast starfield beyond. His reflection in the transparent material showed not triumph, but weariness, the face of a man who had gambled everything on one bold move, and now had to see it through to conclusion. "First step taken," he murmured to himself, gently touching the viewport. "Now for the hard part." In the 6 hours before the transport arrived, Jackson rested, but did not sleep. He spent time reviewing the data on the Void Harvesters, preparing his presentation for the High Council, and occasionally glancing at the small, innocuous ring on his left hand. A simple band that appeared decorative, but contained Earth's contingency plans should negotiations fail. When Zorax returned to escort him to the docking bay, Jackson was ready, standing tall despite his age, his face composed and focused. "The transport has arrived," Zorax announced. "Supreme Counselor Thax and the full High Council await your presentation." "Then let's not keep them waiting," Jackson replied, following the commander into the corridor where Nix and Krell again joined their procession. As they walked, Nix moved closer to Jackson. "I've been analyzing your data on the Harvesters. Their consumption rate is accelerating. We may have less than 5 years before they reach populated systems." "I know," Jackson said quietly, "which is why this alliance is not just desirable but essential. Neither humanity nor the Coalition can face this threat alone." They reached the docking bay, where a sleek diplomatic vessel waited, its design far more elegant than the military functionality of the Iron Talon. As they approached the boarding ramp, Krell suddenly spoke, his gravelly voice uncharacteristically subdued. "Human, Vale, if your species has studied these harvesters for 15 years, why wait until now to approach the Coalition? Why not come forward sooner?" Jackson stopped and turned to face the Draxian. "We tried, Security Chief," 3 times in the past decade, Earth sent diplomatic missions with this data. 3 times. They were dismissed as exaggerations or misinterpretations by a primitive species. The most recent attempt was just 8 months ago. His blue eyes hardened. So we changed tactics. Krell's compound eyes reflected unease. And if we had executed you immediately upon capture, as I initially suggested, then another human would have come, with less patience and more forceful methods. Jackson replied simply. We are persistent, if nothing else. The boarding process was efficient, and soon the diplomatic vessel detached from the Iron Talon, its advanced propulsion system engaging to carry them toward the heart of Coalition space. Jackson was provided a private cabin, though he spent most of the journey in the ship's observation lounge with Zorax and Nyx, discussing the Void Harvesters and potential defense strategies. Krell joined them occasionally, his initial hostility gradually shifting to grudging respect as Jackson displayed detailed knowledge of Coalition military capabilities and thoughtful analysis of their strategic weaknesses against the coming threat. Your assessment of our defensive vulnerabilities is uncomfortably accurate, Krell admitted during one such discussion. How did Earth acquire such detailed information about Coalition military deployments? Observation, inference, and patience. Jackson replied. When you're considered harmless, people tend to speak more freely in your presence. Earth has had scientific and cultural observers in Coalition space for decades. They listen, they learn, and they report back. Zorax frowned. You're describing espionage. I'm describing survival, Jackson countered. Would you not do the same if a more powerful civilization held your fate in their hands while dismissing your concerns? The commander had no response to that. After 2 days of travel, they arrived at Coalition headquarters, an artificial world constructed at the precise gravitational center of Coalition space. Its surface, a masterpiece of architectural diversity designed to accommodate all member species. The diplomatic vessel docked at a high-security bay reserved for High Council business. As Jackson prepared to disembark, Nyx approached him with what appeared to be a communication device. This will translate the various council languages automatically. Some members refuse to use common speech as a matter of principle. Thank you, Jackson said, accepting the device. Though I should mention that I speak functional Vixari and Lyrathi already, part of my diplomatic training. Nyx's large eyes registered surprise. You continue to defy expectations, Jackson Vale. That, Jackson smiled, is humanity's specialty. The High Council chamber was imposing by design. A vast, circular room with ascending tiers of seating for the representatives of 27 spacefaring civilizations. At the center stood a speaker's platform, where Jackson now positioned himself, his aged frame appearing almost fragile beneath the towering ceiling and before the assembled alien dignitaries. Supreme Counselor Thax presided from the highest tier, his ancient form supported by a hover chair that compensated for his species' natural gravity requirements. Beside him sat representatives of the founding Coalition species, Vixari, Lyrathi, Draxian, and others Jackson recognized from Earth's xenobiological databases. Jackson Vale of Earth. Thax's voice was amplified throughout the chamber. You come before this council under unusual circumstances. Your actions aboard the enforcement vessel Iron Talon would typically warrant severe punishment. However, the gravity of the information you have brought us necessitates flexibility in our response. Jackson inclined his head respectfully. I appreciate the Council's willingness to hear Earth's message, regardless of how it was delivered. Present your case, human. A Draxian counselor rumbled from the second tier. We have reviewed the preliminary data, but we require more comprehensive information before considering your proposal. Of course, Counselor. Jackson activated the holographic interface before him, and the chamber darkened as a three-dimensional display materialized above the speaker's platform. What followed was a masterclass in diplomatic presentation. For 2 hours, Jackson methodically outlined humanity's discovery of the void harvesters, their observed behaviors, their technological capabilities, and the projected threat timeline. He presented evidence from lost research outposts, spectral analyses of consumed star systems, and gravitational wave patterns that indicated the harvesters' communications. Throughout, he maintained perfect composure, answering questions precisely, acknowledging knowledge gaps honestly, and gently but firmly correcting misconceptions about human research capabilities. The council members, initially skeptical, grew increasingly somber as the presentation continued. Based on current trajectories and consumption patterns, Jackson concluded, the harvesters will reach the Cygnus arm within 4 years and 8 months. The most heavily populated coalition systems will be directly in their path, approximately 6 months later. He paused, letting the gravity of the timeline sink in. No single species, not humanity, not even the combined current forces of the coalition, possesses the technology to defeat them. But together, with shared knowledge and resources, we might develop it in time. Silence filled the chamber as the display faded, leaving Jackson standing alone on the platform. Finally, a Laerathi counselor spoke, her melodic voice troubled. Your presentation is compelling, Jackson Vale, but it leads to an uncomfortable question. If Earth has been aware of this threat for 15 years, why have you developed no effective countermeasures in that time? With respect, Counselor, we have developed theoretical countermeasures, Jackson replied. What we lack is the industrial capacity and advanced quantum engineering to implement them at the necessary scale. That is precisely why we seek full coalition membership, to combine our theoretical models with your production capabilities. A murmur spread through the council chamber as members conferred with advisors and each other. Supreme Counselor Thax raised a gnarled hand for silence. You speak of theoretical countermeasures, the ancient Vixari said. Elaborate. Jackson nodded and activated the holographic display once more. The Harvester's technology appears to create quantum tunnels directly into stellar cores, extracting energy through artificial microwormholes. Our research suggests these tunnels can be collapsed using precisely calibrated graviton pulse arrays. The display showed detailed schematics of a theoretical weapon system. However, the energy requirements and manufacturing precision exceed Earth's current capabilities. A Draxian counselor leaned forward, compound eyes fixed on the schematics. These designs incorporate theoretical physics that our scientists have only begun to explore. Yes, Counselor, Jackson acknowledged. Humanity has focused much of its research on theoretical physics, particularly in areas where we might gain strategic advantage, despite our physical limitations. In some areas, this has led us to explore concepts that coalition science has not prioritized. Another murmur, this one with a different tone, surprise mingled with reluctant admiration. Thax conferred briefly with the counselors nearest him, then addressed Jackson again. Your proposal, then, is a formal alliance, Earth contributing theoretical knowledge and the coalition providing manufacturing capabilities and resources. My proposal is full membership for Earth in the coalition, Jackson corrected firmly. Not as a Class B observational member, but as a Class A governing partner with all associated rights and responsibilities. In exchange, we offer not only our research on the harvesters, but our complete scientific database, including advancements in quantum information theory, gravitational manipulation, and conscious AI development. The chamber erupted in overlapping conversations, some clearly skeptical, others intrigued. Thax allowed the discussion to continue for several minutes, before again calling for order. Such reclassification is unprecedented, the Supreme Counselor stated. No species has ever advanced directly from Class B to Class A status without centuries of intermediate development. No species has ever faced extinction from void harvesters before, either, Jackson countered. Unprecedented threats require unprecedented solutions. Counselor. A new voice entered the discussion. A Vixari female whose scales bore the distinctive patterns of the scientific directorate. The human's reasoning is logical. Our classification system, while effective for peaceful expansion, may be inadequate for crisis response. I move that we consider Earth's petition on its merits, rather than precedent. Seconded, came the surprising response from a Draxian counselor. The warrior acknowledges worthy allies, regardless of physical form. Thax studied Jackson for a long moment, ancient eyes unreadable. The council will deliberate on Earth's petition. You will be summoned when a decision is reached. He gestured, and attendants moved forward to escort Jackson from the chamber. As Jackson left, he caught Zorax's eye from where the commander stood with other military advisors. The Vixari gave him a slight nod, not quite friendly, but respectful. Progress indeed. The deliberations lasted 3 days. Jackson was provided comfortable quarters appropriate for human physiology and treated with the respect due a diplomatic envoy, if not yet an equal. He spent the time reviewing data, conferring remotely with Earth's leadership, and occasionally meeting with individual counselors who sought clarification on specific aspects of his presentation. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, he was summoned back to the council chamber. The atmosphere had changed noticeably. Less hostile skepticism, more focused determination. Jackson took his position on the speaker's platform, standing as straight as his aged body allowed, dignity in every line of his posture. Supreme Counselor Thax addressed him directly. Jackson, Vale of Earth, the High Council has reached a decision regarding your petition. The ancient Vixari's expression remained impassive. We have verified your data independently and confirm the Void Harvester threat is real and imminent. This alone merits extraordinary response. Jackson waited silently, knowing better than to interrupt. Furthermore, Thax continued, your species has demonstrated capabilities and knowledge that our classification system failed to properly account for. This failure represents a flaw in our assessment methodology that must be addressed. Murmurs of agreement came from several counselors, including, notably, representatives of the Draxian Imperium, who had traditionally been the most resistant to human advancement. Therefore, by unanimous vote of this council, Earth is hereby granted Provisional Class A status within the Coalition, with full review after a period of 5 standard years. Thax's announcement echoed through the chamber. All restrictions on technology sharing, territorial expansion, and governance participation are lifted, effective immediately. Jackson allowed himself a small smile, not of triumph, but of relief. The people of Earth thank the High Council for their wisdom and foresight. We pledge our full cooperation in the coming crisis. There are conditions, Thax added, his tone sharpening slightly. First, Earth will immediately share all research related to quantum information theory and gravitational manipulation. Second, joint research facilities will be established in neutral space to develop the countermeasures you have proposed. Third, Earth will accept coalition security protocols and oversight during this provisional period. Acceptable conditions, Jackson nodded. With one amendment, oversight must be mutual. Coalition facilities working with human technology will accept Earth observers with equal authority. A brief silence followed this counterproposal. Then, surprisingly, a Draxian counselor laughed, a sound like grinding stones that startled many in the chamber. The human negotiates like a Draxian war chief. The counselor rumbled approvingly. I support this amendment. Alliance means trust on both sides. Thax inclined his head slightly. Amended as suggested. A formal treaty will be prepared for ratification by Earth's governing body. His ancient eyes fixed on Jackson. You have achieved a significant victory for your species today, Jackson Vale. I trust it will benefit us all in the coming darkness. That is my sincere hope, Supreme Counselor, Jackson replied. Humanity has long survived by forming alliances against common threats. We bring to this partnership not just our knowledge, but our determination and adaptability. As the formal session concluded, various counselors approached Jackson to introduce themselves and establish preliminary diplomatic connections. The atmosphere had transformed completely from his first appearance. No longer was he viewed as an inferior being to be tolerated, but as a representative of a valuable ally. Zorax, Nyx, and Krell found him later in a quiet corner of the diplomatic reception area, momentarily free from the press of counselors and their aides. "So," Zorax said, his voice carrying a hint of ironic amusement, "the frail human prisoner has transformed into a respected coalition partner in less than a week. Impressive diplomacy." Jackson Vale. "Necessary diplomacy, Commander," Jackson corrected, looking tired but satisfied. "Though I admit, your initial reception aboard the Iron Talon wasn't quite what I had anticipated." Krell made the grinding sound that passed for Draxian laughter. "You anticipated execution, based on my recommendation." "I anticipated skepticism," Jackson smiled. "The execution threat was an added challenge." Nyx studied him with those large, perceptive eyes. "There's something I've been curious about since our first meeting. The code that compromised our ship. It could have done far more damage than it did, couldn't it?" Jackson's smile faded, replaced by seriousness. "Yes. It could have disabled life support, weapon systems, even the quantum core containment. That was never our intention. However, the demonstration was designed to command attention, not to harm." "A predator that shows restraint," Zorax observed. "Perhaps that is what truly makes an apex species, knowing when not to use one's full capabilities." "Perhaps," Jackson agreed. "Or perhaps it's recognizing when cooperation serves better than competition." He looked out at the gathering of diverse species, all now focused on the common threat. Humanity learned long ago that our greatest strength lies not in dominating others, but in forming communities that bring out the best in each member. "A philosophy worth considering," Nyx said thoughtfully. "Though it conflicts with much of Coalition history." "History is written by survivors," Jackson replied. "And I intend for both humanity and the Coalition to survive the coming storm." He straightened, setting aside his momentary weariness. "Now, shall we discuss how to integrate Earth's defense theories with Coalition technology? We have much work to do and limited time." As they moved to join a group of military and scientific leaders, Jackson Vale walked with the quiet confidence of a man who had gambled everything on humanity's behalf and won, not domination, but partnership, not subjugation, but respect. Behind him, 3 aliens who had once seen him as inferior now followed as colleagues, their perspectives fundamentally altered by one elderly human who had proven that true predatory nature wasn't measured in physical strength, but in intelligence, patience, and the courage to risk everything for one's people. The treaty that would formalize Earth's new status was already being drafted, but the real work, preparing for the Void Harvesters, was just beginning. Yet for the first time, humanity would face this existential threat, not as isolated observers, but as full partners in a galactic alliance. Their unique perspectives and innovative thinking, now recognized as the valuable assets they had always been. In the end, Jackson reflected, as he prepared to address the assembled leaders, it wasn't about being apex predators at all. It was about being apex survivors. And that was a title humanity had earned through millennia of overcoming seemingly impossible odds. Now they would help the Coalition do the same, together, facing a darkness that threatened them all. Supreme Counselor Thax approached, hovering beside him on his gravity chair. "Your Earth representatives will arrive within the week to formalize the treaty," the ancient Vixari informed him. "Until then, you will serve as humanity's voice in our strategic planning." "I am honored to do so, Counselor," Jackson replied. "Though I must warn you, We humans can be rather stubborn when defending our ideas. So we have noticed, Thax said dryly. But perhaps that stubbornness is exactly what we need against an enemy that has never known defeat. He gestured toward the assembled leaders. They are ready to hear Earth's defense proposals. Show us what human ingenuity has conceived. Jackson Vale. With a nod of acknowledgement, Jackson stepped forward to present humanity's vision for survival, not as a captive or supplicant, but as an equal partner in the greatest challenge the galaxy had ever faced. Behind him, the stars shone through a vast viewport, beautiful and serene, giving no hint of the darkness that approached. But now, at least, they would face that darkness together.